And good afternoon, and welcome to a show called Truth to Power. And that's what we hope to do in this next hour is to bring truth to power. We want to go and dispel some of the misinformation with some of the information that social media and other people may be disseminating out to the public when it comes down to the upcoming elections. We've got two elections that people still have to vote in. We've got a primary, and we've also got a general election. And the way that we look at it is that if you want to be able to predict the future, you have to plan it today. We want to make certain that everybody gets an opportunity to go and support the candidates of their choice in this upcoming election. I have two people on the show with me that are political analysts, and to my right, my guest is Miss Letitia Sharp, and to her right is Mr. Norman Clement. Mr. Clement, Ms. Sharp, thank you for coming on Truth to Power today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having me.
Wanted to ask you both questions about, we've got two guests that are going to be coming on the show. We've got Dr. Quarles and Nancy Quarles, and we've also got Bishop Edgar Vann. Both of these individuals are pretty much like in the community, they are people that know how to bring truth to power. My question to both of you before we get to our guests is that, Norman, I'm going to ask you first, how important is this upcoming election to you? Not just to vote in the primary, but also to vote in the general election.
It's very important to us here. The stakes are high. This primary is going to be highly contested. First time we ever have a new senator seat up. General election is going to be very contested. We got two. We have a swing state going on right now, and so the stakes are higher than ever before. This election is about democracy. This election is about bringing what is truth, facts, and what's happening on the ground. So the stakes are high, as De La Soul says.
Okay.
Well, I certainly agree 100% with Norman. I think that also we need to look at every level of government when we start to go out and vote, and we need to look at all the candidates and look at the information that they're sharing, and then also be able to track that information. So we're looking at local and state races, and just really holding folks accountable for the things that they say and the things that they have done or say that they will do. So the stakes are very, very high, and this election is most important because it will change our lives in either way, depending on if we get to that poll or not and we vote. It will change how we live after that November election.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Well, it looks like we've got our first guest on the line, and this is Bishop Edgar Vann of Second Ebenezer Church in Detroit. Bishop Vann, welcome to Truth to Power today.
Good afternoon. How are you?
We're doing quite well. The minute we hear your voice, we know we're doing quite well.
Yes. Hello, Bishop.
All right.
But, Bishop, just have a couple of questions we wanted to ask you so that you could go and utilize your platform as you do in your congregation to the vast majority of people that need to hear what Bishop Vann has to say when it comes to this upcoming election. But, Bishop, the first question I would like to ask you is that former President Donald Trump recently visited the 180 Church located on the outskirts of downtown Detroit, in the neighborhood, as people say. Mm-hmm. And the visit has stirred a debate about whether it was intended to gain support amongst the black voters. What are your thoughts?
Well, I don't know. I think it's much ado about nothing. There was a small crowd. The crowd was majority white. It wasn't that big a deal. I think sometimes we can make a big deal out of no deal. I think that the pastor will have to live with his decision for the rest of his life for hosting it. But I also believe that people can host whatever they want to host and do whatever they want to do. I think it was ill-advised, politically ignorant, and certainly an insult to our community. But we're not a monolithic political community, and so I don't think it was that successful of a rally. And that's kind of where I like to leave it.
Okay, and Donald Trump's efforts to engage the black voters contrast with President Biden's ongoing outreach and accomplishments. What are your thoughts on Trump's efforts versus Biden's versus, what he's trying to do in the community?
I think the Biden campaign has done a tremendous job this time of running a very robust, strategic, and intentional campaign aimed at assuaging black voters. I don't think the Democratic Party does a good job. I think they have failed us nationally and statewide in terms of leading us toward an election cycle. Jamie Harrison, who is he? Where is he from? What is he? Where is he visible in terms of the national Democratic Party? LaVar Barnes, where is she in terms of the statewide party? But I think that the Biden campaign has done a fairly great job of reaching out to the community. They've beefed up their message. They had listening parties. They listened. Their approach, their strategy. They're not taking votes for granted. And they're touting what Biden has done in terms of job creation, the 15 million jobs he's done, the lowest unemployment rate in 50 years, the capped insulin rates at $35, the lowering of drug costs, the infrastructure, roads and bridges, and things like that. The student debt, of course, is a big one for our community. So I think that as these themes continually roll out, it's going to be a positive thing for the Biden campaign, and they just got to keep plugging away.
And then, Bishop, also, both Donald Trump and Joe Biden have claimed to have a strong devotion to the black community. What are your thoughts about how President Biden's commitment to the black community compares to Donald Trump's?
I think it's historical. I think Mr. Biden, for many years, even in the Senate, has generally been a great friend to our community. He has, during his presidency, we have the first black woman on the Supreme Court. He promised that. He delivered that. It's those kinds of things, promises made, promises kept, that I think, highlight his leadership as opposed to the other candidate, who I just generally don't like to mention his name. I think that we mention his name too much. I think that we ought to be touting the positivity of our candidate and what we believe Mr. Biden will continue to do if he is reelected. We cannot vote image. We must vote substance. We must know the issues, and we must have better political education in our community that's policy-driven and not personality-driven. And I think that that's going to bode well for us even in the future.
So what do you think then, Bishop, is the message that needs to be disseminated out by Trump or by Biden to the American public?
Well, I think that, Trump has said, what he would do in terms of dismantling Medicare, dismantling and cutting Social Security, redefining democracy or the lack thereof, in terms of him wanting to be a dictator, saying that, if I'm not reelected, there'll be a bloodbath. I mean, there are just so many things that he's already outlined that would be coming forth if he were to be reelected. I mean, I think that on our watch as a people, there is no way that we can allow this to happen. And again, I think that the Biden campaign recognizes that the polls are showing that there is a great softening of the black vote in our community, and he knows that he needs that vote. There's a great softening of that vote, particularly among black men, and young black males. And I think that he is zeroing in on being intentional about reaching that particular demographic. And so I just think that he's got to work very, very hard. His people have to work very, very hard as well, making sure that that message goes forth. Would we want a convicted felon to be our president? I mean, these are the kinds of salient issues that need to be presented to the public in a very matter-of-factly type of way, which I think just makes sense. And then we would look to our people to respond in a sensible manner.
Well, one other question I want to ask you before I turn it over to my colleagues here is that what do you think that the American public looks at in their president? Do you think that they're going to be voting based on issues or based on character?
Well, I think that I have to be honest, and I think that many people who are not politically educated vote image. They vote what they see in the commercials. They vote their particular composite of an individual. Biden, as we know, is a little bit of an older man, and of course, I think for his age, he's pretty robust. However, if people perceive weakness, then they don't look for weakness in a leader. So when they make the comparison, from an image standpoint, and this is why I say we have to get away from that. We have to stop voting image and start voting substance. But you cannot vote substance if you don't know substance. And so it's important, and I'm old enough to remember when we discussed this in school, where civics classes and American history classes were a part of our initiation into the civic engagement process.
Absolutely.
That doesn't happen anymore in our educational process. That's a whole nother subject, education. But I'm just saying that we have to be we have to know the issues, and then we as a people must have certain touch points in our agenda as a people that we make comparisons with candidates to see if they are in support of. Now, in order to have an agenda, we've got to be, again, politically astute enough to come up with one and to rally our people behind it, not just in an election cycle. Because when the election cycle comes, then the imaging comes, the social media stuff comes, the things that we see on the news comes. I think it's going to be important for our people to see and to know just exactly what candidates stand for and to make their proper decisions.
Well, Bishop, I know that we've got to make a hard stop shortly, so I'm going to give my two colleagues a chance that they can go and ask you a question real quick. We've only got a couple of minutes left in the segment. But Letitia Sharp would like to ask you a question.
Hi, Bishop. I'm going to kind of piggyback on something you just said. So we know that there's numerous candidates and several races throughout this election season. So what factors do you think, in your opinion, should black voters take into consideration before selecting the political candidate that they're going to back? What should they be looking for?
Yeah, I think that they should, and I appreciate the question, I think that they should really, really be looking at track records. I mean, let's look at the track records of candidates. Let's look at the things that they've articulated. Let's look at their platforms so that we know. I mean, I don't know if the average voter looks at the platform of a candidate anymore. I don't know if the average person, sees anything other than the TV commercials that they have seen, which, as we all know, are, branded and promotional things to present a certain image. But we need to get behind the commercial to try to find out what the candidate really stands for, what their capabilities are, what their track record has been, and what their promises in their platform are.
Thank you. Yeah.
Norman.
Yes, so you talk about the black voters are frequently underestimated in terms of power. What impact does that black vote have in Michigan right now?
Well, I think that we've got to take a look at the black vote in a new way. I think that the political playbook that we've come out of for so many years is a bit archaic. When you have voters, black voters under 50, they don't really have a frame of reference about, the civil rights movement and what it took for our people to get to vote and all of that kind of thing. That is not salient with them. That is not a reason for them to vote. Many of them come outside, look on their porch and look down the street and think that nothing has changed for them, no matter who is in charge, no matter who gets elected. What we've got to be able to do is have good candidates who deliver, and we've got to have changes in our communities. So we can't just keep using the same messaging to our community and think that it's going to work.
Well, Bishop, we really appreciate this time that you've taken with us, on Truth to Power. And we hope that you will come back on with us and visit us again, because your information, the platform that you have, generates so much in terms of, say, in the consciousness and the awareness of the black voters, in and around the Detroit area. So again, we want to thank Bishop Edgar Vann, Second Ebenezer Church, and I'm going to give a little shout out real quick on DeQuinder right there near 6 Mile. So again, we definitely appreciate you. We appreciate all that you do in the community, and God may continue to bless you with all that you do, Bishop Vann.
Well, thank you so much. I'm humbled to be with you and your wonderful panel.
Thank you again.
Thank you, Bishop.
All right.
Bye.
Okay, and want our audience to stay tuned. We've got Dr. Nancy Quarles, which is going to be coming on and joining us shortly. But before we get to Dr. Quarles, I just want to kind of get a little wrap up with you, Norman, and with you, Letitia, about your reflections on what Bishop Vann said in the 15 minutes that he spent with us. But I'll go with you, Norman.
Well, I think the key word is stop voting image versus substance. I think he said it's to a point of this reality TV culture that we're growing up into. Young voters see and the nonsense that happens. That's good for TV, but not good for the White House. And I think that is something that a strategist needs to understand, that talking with proof, fact documentation that the Biden administration is doing, that is a long way. That's a great way to go for getting folks out to vote.
And I'm going to just put it in a nutshell. We used to say, when people show you who they are, believe them. But I think I'm going to add, when they show you who they are and tell you who they are, we should believe them. And so look at platforms. He talked about looking at platforms, looking at track records, and really honing in to making sure that these candidates are doing what they say they're going to do. I talked to some young adults a couple weeks ago, and I said, your vote is your voice, and you own that voice, and you have a right to ask candidates what they're going to do with your vote. And when they don't do what they say they're going to do, you have a right to challenge them. So I think it's very important that we get out of that. Let's just put somebody in because they sound good, they look good, or whatever. Let's look for substance. And I think that if we really look at that, we will make the right decisions and be educated. That's what he said. You got to be educated about who you're voting for.
And and one thing that he's saying too was that if you do have questions about candidates, research.
Right.
Look the information up. We've got great platforms that we can do research on, from Google, Yahoo, other venues, and look up their track record. Ask questions, talk to people, and have this dialogue in your barbershops or your beauty salons or places like that, and decide to be able to make an empirical decision about who you want to support. One thing that I really loved what he said too was about civic engagement. That's something that's really important, because a lot of people do not see civics in the classrooms now.
Right.
And I know we had civics back when I was in the 8th grade, and a lot of young people now, when you ask them about the 3 branches of government, do they understand how they're interconnected, with each other?
Right.
And the other part too is that knowing how many senators each state has, how many Democrats or Republicans are in the House of Representatives, knowing even the differences between some of your local elections, like with the difference between a person that may be seeking your support in a ward versus in a district
Right.
for like city council, and the differences between council people and commissioners.
Right.
So that's the thing that we really need to really kind of stress, because people will understand more about why the midterm elections as well as the primaries are so important.
Right.
Because you have the judges that are seeking your support in some of the primary elections. You also have school board candidates, treasurers, trustees, superintendents. I mean, there's a lot of different positions that people are really seeking your support on. And just as Bishop was saying about civic engagement, will really help to kind of understand what each of these positions reflect on.
Yeah, I think that's a key of civic engagement with our classrooms, and especially with the upcoming elections of the school board. That's a key factor that's coming up right now. I remember we had civics, we had social studies, civics, we had
Political
economics, political science. We had all those before I touched 10th grade. Now that's not the same. And so we're dealing with a deficit of education on civics, functional government. And so right now our job as a community is to educate civic engagement all levels of our society. That means family reunions, you talk politics or spades, all that stuff. We have to engage our youth, engage our community members in every way we can, and meet them where they are.
Exactly. And it's very important too that we always remember that, there's all levels of government is extremely important, but the ones that you can touch and see and call and be at your local level, I think it's just as important to make sure that you're engaged in every level of government, especially when there's voting involved, because that's a privilege that we've not always had as Black people. And we know that it's not a secret. And now that we have more African Americans being involved in the political process, running for offices or just supporting political candidates, I think that as we get involved, we need to really make sure that we understand how it all works and how our vote really matters.
So let me ask this last question before we get to Dr. Quarles, is that when you look at the votes really matter, what do you think that young people need to hear more from us to get them encouraged in the political process?
I think it's not just what they need to hear from us. I think we need to start listening to them. I think that they're very powerful voices out there. They certainly have challenges that we don't have. I mean, our culture has changed. Our generations have changed. Technology has really moved us further than we, in a very fast pace. So I think that we need to kind of set a platform where we can hear what their agenda is, hear what their concerns are, and then we can make the proper decisions to move forward and how we engage with them.
And I'm also going to say we need to include them in the process on every level. That means canvassing. That means going out to touching folks, volunteer, or also getting paid to be in canvassers or organize for a party. Youth workers are some of the best workers that you'll ever have, and they want to be a part of this process. They want to support the candidate. There's ways that they can get involved. I think that our youth workers who are in those communities that are not being touched or who feel, apathetic to the voting process, they can speak something to those neighbors in that community that we might not can say or ad can say. So getting them involved and being the hiring process through that is a great start.
I just want to add, when I started my political interest started just canvassing and knocking on doors for, and I was only 18 years old at the time. And so that was just they involved me, right? Right. So it was a time that I felt I was a young person, and this person that was running for state rep, I believe at the time, engaged me in her race, and it empowered me to learn more about political government, how government works, how it's all interactive. Now I have 35 years later, but I started at 18. And so I agree 100% with you. We got to start them early if we want them to be part of the process.
Well, before we get just one last quick question, Norman, Letitia, what is the main bit of misinformation that you hear when it comes to voting?
That it doesn't matter, your vote doesn't count, and some dark group is ruling the world anyway. And that could be further from the truth. That's the easiest way to give up your power. Misinformation is what's going on right now. Someone always want to believe in the boogeyman. No, you have the power to put people in office because you're in charge. Right. And people have to realize their own power. And that's what we want to give them, say, hey, they work for you, not the other way around.
Right. And we put, I think it's because 100% agree with Norman too, is that I think that they're not empowered, or they feel like their vote is less than another person's vote, and it's not. We get one. And, and I think that if we empower people to say your vote matters no matter where you live, no matter where you work, who you know,
or no matter your
age group, how you look, all that doesn't matter. Your voice matters and your vote matters.
Okay. Well, without further ado, we have a young lady that's on the phone with us now, and her name needs no real long-winded introduction. When you say the name Dr. Nancy Quarles, everybody knows who Dr. Quarles is.
Yes.
And if you don't, I'd be very, very surprised if you didn't know who Dr. Nancy Quarles is. Dr. Quarles, welcome to Truth to Power.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate the introduction.
And we appreciate you being on the show with us. I'm gonna ask some questions to you, and then I'll let Letitia and Norman ask you some questions as well. But wanted to ask you, the first question I wanted to ask you, the same question I asked to Bishop Vann, was that former President Donald Trump recently visited the 180 Church located in the outskirts of downtown Detroit. The visit stirred a debate about whether or not if it was intended to gain support amongst black voters. What's your thoughts on his visit?
Yeah, I think he would love to gain support among African American voters. However, I think it was more to stir the pot, to show that he'll come into areas that are usually looked at as democratic, and he has no reason to step back. And with that attitude, I expect to see he and some of his surrogates showing up more and more.
Well, Donald Trump's efforts to engage the black voters contrast with President Biden's ongoing message and accomplishments and his outreach. What are your thoughts about Trump's efforts versus Biden's efforts to try and garner the support?
Yeah, I think the key word is ongoing. Mr. President Biden has done a number of initiatives to show the African American community that he's a friend and that he's here to stay. He has put in infrastructure works to help us. He's very busy with increasing jobs and making sure that the African American communities are in the recipients of the jobs, as well as the economic growth. He's concerned about families, from education all to our seniors and those that's receiving Medicaid as well as Medicare. I see our president as the person that's going to be here and making himself available.
Well, now, when you look at both Trump and Biden have claimed to have a strong devotion to the black community. So looking at your thoughts in terms of, say, about President Biden's commitment to the black community, how do you think it compares or not compare to former President Trump's?
I don't think there's much of a comparison. I lived through the Trump era, and I can't recall much that former President Trump did other than give a lot of lip service. I look at the record of our current president, President Biden, and I can point to items, resources that he's done and has brought to the African American community. And I look at it from two perspectives. one, as a citizen, and secondly, as a former elected official during President Biden's early years of his first term, and just know that there is a connection. When it was asked by our counties to help out, as well as our state, he was there. I can't say the same thing about former President Trump.
So now, the last question I want to ask you before I turn it over to my colleagues is that do you think that the voting population is going to vote for president based on the person's character or based on the issues?
At this moment, it's really hard to say. That's why we're out working hard. Similar to what was said earlier by Bishop, we need to make sure the message get out there, and not just the message, the accomplishments, and showing how it's having a direct effect on individuals' lives, their betterment, and the good and welfare of our states, our municipalities, as well as our country.
Okay.
There are several significant issues that are in the forefront. We have abortion, immigration, national security, terrorism, and so forth. What other issues do you believe are most important to black people in your community?
If I heard you correctly, what other issues I believe
are important in the black community at this time?
That's important to the black community?
Yes.
Oh, education. First and foremost, I think everyone knows that education is that tool that moves you from one stage of your life until another. Cost of living. Mm-hmm. People need a wage, and they need resources to ensure that they can take care and provide for their families. The medical system is important. One of the things I have great appreciation for is how President Biden and his administration have to work to ensure that the medical system and insurance are available to everyone, whereas it was my experience that one of the major points of former President Trump was to remove Obamacare and those insurances that would be of access to people in the lower incomes. I still believe that President Biden will continue to work on making a high quality of life for everyone.
Thank you.
Norman.
Yes, so my question is, how can black voters in Michigan make sure their voices are heard in the next election?
First and foremost, we have to get out and vote. I believe it's important that we show up at the polls and exercise our right to vote. We, as black folks, need to look at, when we vote, who's going to do the best job for our community. And when we go to the polls, be educated. And that is simply do your own research. If you're looking at social media or television, make sure you're looking at it from several sides. I've just recently had a conversation with a young adult, and it gave me a lot of hope to hear him say that although he relies on social media for his news, but his mentors over the years have taught him to dig deeper and do your own research. So you'll know who you're voting for and what that person stands for, and even to what you said about character. All of that comes from looking, searching, and understanding.
Is there a follow-up question?
I do. I have a follow-up question, and it's kind of what you were just talking about. So we know that the black vote, that was a privilege that we have not always had. So we are always encouraged to vote in every election. But what is so crucial about this election, in your opinion, that we must get out and vote and not take this one for granted?
I think with this election, I look at it as the long game. There are too many variables that's going to take place in this election. From the Supreme Court, there's a possibility of the Supreme Court, and even a number of federal judges that will be open up for appointment. What we want to be mindful of is how those people who are getting appointed, what's their thought process?
Right.
Are they open-minded or are they single-focused? Other parts of the long game is our daily life and our daily living. Are we voting for a person that's going to ensure that we have the health care that we need, ensure that unemployment records stay down, and particularly in the black communities, wealth gap. As we all know, the economy is growing faster with small business. Is this a person for the long game that's going to help get small business and entrepreneurs in place so that they can make a living for themselves, as well as do job creation? So I think there's a lot at stake in this election.
Right. Appreciate that.
Dr. Quarles, just one other question I want to ask you. So if you had to give a message to the voters in this upcoming election, what would that message be from Dr. Quarles to the voter that wants to know and be on the know when it comes to not just the presidential candidates, but the other candidates that are running and seeking their support as well?
Oh, my message would be, first, be informed. Be an informed voter. And make sure that the people you're putting in have a concern and a thought process that coincide with yours. And not only looking at the short range, but look at the long range. I think by now we should know that those that are making the decisions for us, writing laws, voting in the legislation, adjudicating it, have a long reach. And the reach is not only among people, but it's for a series of years. This election is important. It's crucial. And I would say, more than ever before, talk to people who you trust and people who look to find solutions and answers. And as much as you can, as a young man said to me, do your own research. Do the comparison. It is really necessary. And just know whatever we build today is what's going to propel us in the future.
You know, that brings up so much truth to power, Dr. Quarles, because, you know, as I was saying in my 5 Ps, that proper preparation prevents poor performance. And you're bringing that truth to power to say that if the candidates are properly preparing their electorate or their voting audience, that they will definitely go and reflect on bringing their support to the candidate. Dr. Quarles, we are this has been a plum-pleasing pleasure to have you on the show with us today. And we definitely hope that you will go and consent to coming back on the show to bring more truth to power. And we really appreciate everything. And I think I look at my other colleagues here and listening to what you said, listening to the information that you were giving out, and especially those wise words of wisdom that you left everybody with. I think that you will definitely go and be the person that a lot of people will look to in the future as somebody that they want to go and confer with when they need to do research to find out what the importance is of voting and why they should get out there and vote and support their candidates in future elections.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate programs like yours.
And we appreciate people like you being on programs like ours as well. Because before we got started, that's one of the things, and I'll as we wrap up, that's one of the things that I'm gonna let Ms. Sharp talk about, as to why programs like this are very, very important. And again, we can't thank enough, R.J. Watkins, the president of WHPR, for bringing us on to allow us the platform to be able to do that. And also with his colleagues as well, we definitely want to make certain too that we can do this in the future, because we've got some upcoming topics that we like to bring, and we know Dr. Quarles will bring it as she did today. Dr. Quarles, thank you again for being on the show with us.
Oh, thank you, and thank you for the invitation. And I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon.
We hope you the same as well.
Okay.
She's great. She's great.
I like
So is Bishop Van.
Yes.
Let's make some closing comments real quick. So I'll let ladies go. I'll let you, because I like what you had, and I think what she said was going to kind of lead into kind of how we'll close. So Norman, I'll let you go first, and I'll let you wind it.
Yeah, both conversations were very impactful and great. And what I was refreshed about was that she talked about comparisons. Both of these candidates for president have track records. You see what happened for the track record when the former President Trump was in office and what it led to. And now you see what President Biden, what he got into office and what is that right now. And you have to ask yourself as an individual right now, are you better 4 years when one person was in office compared to the other one was in office? And the track record speaks itself. I think also she speaks about, she talked about education. Those are not going to, doing your own research, not going to research on YouTube channels. Right. Getting your own information. Again, proofs, facts, and documentations. I think those things about we have to do in the community members do a lot of outreach with, but also I think that re-enters the thing about what's going on in civic engagement right now.
And Norman, you bring up a good point, because when you talk about doing the research, don't just research on one network.
Right.
Research on a multitude of networks, as opposed to just getting all your information from one network. Ms. Sharp.
Dr. Quarles said, build today propels us for the future. I like that because it's true. And I think on that note, I'm going to say it's very important for us to not take anything for granted in this election. Don't let someone else decide for you. Do your research. If you don't know how or don't know where to start, reach out to someone that you feel like is engaged and ask questions. Don't go to one resource to get your information. And you started this segment with information versus misinformation. And that's so important, because people will tell you what they think you want to hear. And that's not always good. So make sure you understand the information, make sure you get out to vote, and make sure that your vote matters.
So you kind of so eloquently before we came on air to say, in terms of say why venues like this, why platforms like this are very important to get the message out. And I think it kind of segues a little bit in what you were just saying. So do you want to give a closing comment as to why this was important?
Venues like this are very important, because here you get honest conversation. You get the integrity of what we're saying to be true to the name of the show. and that we have to always have a platform that we feel comfortable. We know that the folks that are giving us information don't have a hidden agenda. We want to be able to give you the information so that you can use it and empower you to be able to do, in this instance, to go out and vote, go out and make sure you research your candidates. We need platforms like this in every community. So I'm appreciative that we get this opportunity to have these kind of conversations, and that, it should be more platforms like this so that we can get this information to the folks that trust us. I think that it's the voice that you hear, and it's the integrity of the people that are speaking that really matters. So I appreciate having this opportunity and this venue to be here to do that. And I just think that it needs to be more conversation.
Norman, I'll give you the last minute, and then I'll wrap up.
Yes, I think this show is definitely needed because we have no egos.
Right.
We meet people wherever they are. We're doing outreaches. These folks up here have done the work, and we know what we're talking about. And we give in true accuracy of what's on the ground team. The message from the troops on the ground, what's going on, and understanding about the rights of voting, understanding the rights of education and outreach. That's what we're here to provide. Something that are just desperately needed in our communities today. And not just our communities, everywhere is needed today, but especially in the city of Detroit. We desperately need this information out there.
Right.
And that's one thing, too, that both of you are saying, too. It's really imperative that we continue to make certain that we keep reiterating the importance of voting.
Right.
To all age groups, in all different venues, to all ethnicities.
Right.
And regardless of economic status, it's really important to make sure we get that message out. And it was great having Bishop Vann and also Dr. Quarles on the show, because as we talk about, the religious community needs to hear from their bishops, their pastors, their priests, or their religious person, to let them know why voting is important. And just as how Dr. Quarles was mentioning about the Supreme Court, there's some major decisions, as you and I both know, that are getting ready to come before the Supreme Court as to what happened on January the 6th, as to those insurrectionists that were there on January the 6th, and also about abortion rights. Right. So there may be the possibility that they may have a couple of additional Supreme Court justice seats that may be asked for Congress to support, additional ones that this person that's going to be in the White House is going to have an impact.
Right.
When it comes to the highest court in the nation making decisions that affect us and our offspring as well.
And Michigan is going to play a very crucial role in those decisions. So we need programs like this in Michigan right now, because these are crucial times. Like I just said, between now and Election Day, we have to get the word out. It's our responsibility. It's all of our responsibility to make sure that we keep each other informed.
And and Norman, Letitia, it's really critical, because if this election was not that important, they wouldn't be spending so much money trying to get people not to vote or give them false information about voting. We talk about the AV ballots. We talk about the early voting. We talk about persons, whether or not if they have felony convictions, can they vote. So there's so much information that they're trying to spend money to dissuade people from voting. And we need to think about that. And we need to, as both of you saying, an educated voter is a powerful voter.
That's exactly.
Yes, it is.
That's
So
it.
we don't want our votes to not be heard. We don't want our voices not to be heard. And we don't want to be the ones to say what happened the day after the election.
Right.
We had something to do with it.
Right.
I do want to thank Norman Clement. I want to thank Letitia Sharp.
Thank you.
I definitely want to go and thank President of WHPR, R.J. Watkins, for all that he's done in the community to assist everyone with getting truth to power and getting the messaging out to the listeners in and around the Detroit community. this has been a great opportunity to give people a chance to go and understand what we do, why we do it, and what we may be doing in the future. Future shows that we could be talking about trying to get more black men to get out into the voting ranks, trying to get more black men to get an opportunity to go and hear what they want to see candidates, not just in the presidential, but also in the local elections, to do in the community, as well as to get more black men around the venues that disseminate this information out. The churches, the barbershops, the sporting venues. So there's a lot of truth to power that we want to disseminate to everyone, and we're hoping that you will continue to support programs like ours, as well as other programs, to let you know your vote is your voice. Again, thank you to R.J. Watkins. Thank you to all of the people that have been so instrumental in making certain that our message today, and from Dr. Van and Dr. Quarles, has been disseminated out to everyone. And we thank Ms. Willis, Mr. Tyler, Mr. Smith, and everyone that's been connected to this program today. Thank you again, and have a very, very plum-pleasing afternoon. And make certain that whatever you do, if you vote, take someone with you to the polls. As what's always being said, not just take your souls to the polls, but take other souls to the polls as well. Have a great rest of this afternoon.